For the next 30 minutes, we will explore the unexplained. From mysteries beyond our galaxy to ghostly phenomena in our own backyard, we will dive into our psychic abilities and explore everything from conspiracies to the just plain weird. Welcome to 30-odd minutes. If the truth is out there, we will find it. But only by sheer accident.
Hey! Welcome back to 30-odd minutes. We have missed you. It's great to be back with you. Excited to be here. We got a hot topic tonight. Hot topic to discuss tonight. Very excited to do that. It's been such a great couple of weeks for us. You've been sending us emails. Reminder, if you're watching the show live at 30oddminutes.com, jump in the chat room because guess what? We have a special guest in the Oddball Pit, Vegan Mel. Yay! Hey, how you been, Vegan Mel?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Yeah.
What's new?
Just happy to be here, sitting on this pleather couch.
It's not real leather. You're a vegan. And speaking of your vegan activities, we have this photo. I know there she is behind me, but you're wondering, what does she look like as a mermaid? And there you go, Vegan Mel as a mermaid.
Fish are friends,
not food. Oh gosh, that's so cute. And what movie did that come from?
Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo. Well done, well done. All right, very good. We're definitely going out for sushi after this.
Hey. I would have said Jaws.
Right. All right, cool. So if you have questions, jump in the chat room because the Oddball Pit, Matt and Sarah and Vegan Mel are all eager to pass up your questions. There they are. And they'll also be reading your emails. We did get some this week. Hey, before we get to that, though, the last month has been really cool. Done a lot of traveling. I was out in Estes Park, Colorado, the Rocky Mountains, Rocky Mountain National Park. Beautiful time. Great event. And, you know, we discuss a lot of legends on this show, and legends aren't always paranormal. Sometimes legends are food. Check this out. And check this out. That's the end. We're going to try from the beginning. We're going to get there. They were a little rusty. Can you tell? I can tell. I can tell.
Oil kid.
You just let me know when we're ready. Hey, but before we get to that, how about we get to those reader emails? Sarah, what did people want to know this week?
Oh, I bet you want us to get to the emails.
I would love to get to the emails.
Super fans. So,
where'd you go? Oh, there you are.
Right here. All right, so first up it says, hey, I somewhat recently found 30-odd minutes. I'm catching up watching all episodes. Where has this show been? It's like Talk Soup meets the paranormal, but Jeff is way better looking than Joel and Kale. You wrote this email, didn't you?
My mom did. My mom wrote that.
Odd Fact with Matt Moniz is friggin' great. I love it. Matt rocks. Keep up the great work. Looking forward to seeing the show live in Chi-Town this October from Schmitty.
Chi-Town.
Just like Chi-Town. That would be Chicago.
I get it. Whatever.
Chicago. Yeah, we've talked about doing that. There's an event out in Chicago this fall, and we're going to try to do a live 30-odd minutes there. Should be an interesting endeavor. So anyway, but without further ado, we talked about legends. Legends can sometimes be food. Let's try this again. Take two. Check this out. Those are Rocky Mountain oysters. All right, I love seafood. Thank you.
Would you like the drum roll?
Hold on. I'm a New England guy. I like seafood. Rocky Mountain oysters. I didn't even know there was an ocean around here. There really is. Oh, yeah. All right,
Rocky Mountain oysters are technically cow testicles. Cow testicles. Cow testicles. Cow testicles.
Oh my God. Let me try another one. Oh, that one's better. I'll do anything on a dare. Vegan Mel, would that count as eating meat? Just curious? Yes? No?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is meat.
Really?
Yes, it is.
Even though they probably didn't die to give up that portion of my dinner?
But they did.
No, you can cut them off and they become steer. That's how a bull becomes steer, I learned. No, that's true. They live after that. I'm not kidding. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't sacrifice anyway.
Don't shatter his little world. Come on.
This is a family show. Speaking of which, we have some images tonight that might be inappropriate for young and sensitive viewers. And if that doesn't have you hooked, we got nothing. This is as good as it's going to get. This is an amazing topic. First time we've covered it on 30-odd minutes. Spontaneous human combustion. Can people, do we have something inside of us that would allow us to burst into flame, burn to ashes, and have nothing left, and yet very little damage around our bodies? It's come up again and again throughout history, and our guest tonight is just the guy to talk about this topic. He's one of the leading experts on the phenomenon of spontaneous human combustion. In 1976, he founded ParaScience International to pursue the exploration of Fortean anomalies and consciousness. And in 1995, his third book was published, ABLAZE, Mysterious Fires of Spontaneous Human Combustion. It's the culmination of decades of research into this subject. You've seen him on countless radio and television programs, including That's Incredible, remember that one? A&E, BBC, Discovery, Fox, just to name a few. And tonight he's all yours. Live from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, please put your hands together for Larry Arnold. Yay! Larry, how are you? Good. We're going to turn his volume up right now.
Just have you down in our neighborhood a couple days ago.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Say it again. We just got you up.
It was nice to have you down in our corner of Pennsylvania a couple days ago, down in Gettysburg at that conference.
I know. I was just there. I should have totally swung by. We weren't far at all, only about an hour apart. So listen, hey, first question. I know you get this a lot. Is it hot in here, or is it just me?
Well, whether it's 30 seconds, 30 minutes, or 30 hours, this is about as odd a topic as you guys are ever going to have to deal with.
That's true. That's true. All right, let's start at the very beginning. What is spontaneous human combustion?
It's the process, the phenomenon whereby a body will blister, smoke, or otherwise burn in the absence of a nearby identifiable radiant heat source. So if you can rule out an open flame, a radiant heat source is a radiator or stove. If you can rule out high amperage, if you can rule out radioactive material or caustic chemicals, then you have to consider if a person is burning, that spontaneous human combustion is the end result or the cause of that process that's ongoing before you or within you.
Right, right. Okay, now how far back do we have documentation of this phenomenon? I know you mentioned in your book Charles Dickens made some reference to it in his fiction, but how far back do you think we can say, hey, that very well may be spontaneous human combustion?
Yeah, Charles Dickens used spawn-com as a literary device in Bleak House. In chapter 32, The Appointed Time, he got rid of Mr. Crook by the means of spontaneous combustion. And Dickens took a lot of heat, if you will, from the scientific community of his day, claiming that he was invoking a mythology that didn't do justice to his literary reputation. And Dickens countered by saying that he had done some research and he felt that he was perfectly justified to use SHC not only as a literary device, but based on historical fact. We found the earliest case that we can identify in the medical literature dates back to the latter part of the 1400s, involving a knight at that time who was said to have breathing fire and then consumed himself to powder.
Right, right.
If we look at mythology and legends and things along that line, and also some history dating back to the Roman and Greek times, we believe we can find very accurate descriptions of this phenomenon dating back for thousands of years. So this appears to be a phenomenon that's been plaguing mankind for millennia. All right. Even though it's still not recognized officially today.
Okay, well, let's start with the case that I think got you hooked. This is Dr. John Irving Bentley of Coudersport, Pennsylvania. Tell us what happened December 5th, 1966. And again, seriously, folks, we weren't joking before. We are going to show some images that are a bit gruesome for young viewers, and we'll show that in a second. But before we get to that, please take us back to December 5th, 1966.
The story begins about 8 o'clock on Monday morning, December 5, 1966. A local meter reader for the gas company, Don Gosnell, walked into the front door of Dr. Bentley's home to read the gas meter down in the basement. Mr. Gosnell was a retired firefighter, and while he was down in the basement, he noticed in a corner of the earthen floor was a pile of ash about 5 inches in height, about 14 inches in diameter. Mr. Gosnell was a volunteer firefighter, and he was perplexed about something had burned in Dr. Bentley's home overnight, but he was curious as to why he and his colleagues didn't get a fire call to come out and put out the fire. He looked overhead while he was down in the basement and saw a hole in the basement ceiling about 2 feet by 3 feet in size. Walked back upstairs, and because Dr. Bentley was the only inhabitant at that time on North Main Street in Coudersport at that building, walked inside to make sure that Dr. Bentley, 92 years of age, was in good health that morning. While he didn't find Dr. Bentley in the sitting room of his apartment, Mr. Gosnell stepped into the apartment, stuck his head around the corner into the bathroom, and saw something that just turned him white.
Saw this.
And this photo is that scene that Don Gosnell literally stumbled into. He realized at that moment that the ashen pile that he had seen moments earlier down in the basement had been a human body, specifically Dr. Bentley. Sometime overnight, Dr. Bentley in northern Pennsylvania became the quintessential poster boy, if you will, for a classic scene of spontaneous human combustion. His body was reduced almost completely to dry powder. There was no other significant fire or heat damage in the apartment. We were at that fire scene in the early stages of our investigation into this anomalous phenomenon, and can attest to you that the paint on the bathtub that's shown in the upper corner of that photograph did not even blister. The aluminum walker that Dr. Bentley used to help him move about his apartment would melt at 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. There was not a scorch mark on the ceiling overhead. Dr. Bentley literally burned downward through the floor and into the basement below, leaving behind that one half of one leg, which was his legacy to this amazing phenomenon of localized combustion that suggests a tremendous amount of high heat, high thermal energy, and yet the surrounding survival of combustibles that are much more easily burned than is the human body escaped without damage.
Right, right. Now, if we could show this photo again real quickly. So look at the scene again. I know it was kind of gruesome. That is indeed his human leg. But look around it. I mean, there's very little damage, just that one spot, and it was enough to consume an entire human body. Talk to us, Larry. When you go through, when a body is cremated in a crematorium, what kind of heat, what kind of energy, and how long does it take to reduce a body to ashes when you pay to have this service as part of a funeral?
Yeah, great question when we're talking about this phenomenon. When a cadaver is cremated in a retort, usually the cremation operator fires up the retort to temperatures about 22 to 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit for an hour, perhaps as long as an hour and a half. And then the retort temperatures are lowered to 1,700 to 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, and the cremation continues for another hour and a half to 2.5 hours. So we're talking a tremendous amount of heat, a long duration of time, and the consumption of 40 or 50 gallons of fuel oil or a lot of natural gas to do that. And yet what comes out of the retort is not the proverbial dust and ash. It's actually bone fragment along with powder. And the bone fragments are put in a device called a cremulator, which mechanically grinds the bone fragments to dust, which is then put in an urn and given to the next of kin. What Dr. Bentley left behind, as have hundreds of other cases similar to his, is a body that is reduced more completely than normally can be achieved in a crematorium retort itself. But if the temperatures of a retort were at the fire scene of Dr. Bentley, for example, the whole house would have burned to the ground. Structure fires rarely go above 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. So the mystery immediately becomes, how did someone like Dr. Bentley consume himself more completely than a crematorium allows a cadaver to be burned under the best conditions that science can presently offer, and yet not burn down a tinderbox in an environment around him?
Right, right. No, very strange. Definitely one question very pertinent, I think, to tonight's discussion, especially considering our other guest here. Are you a vegetarian, Larry Arnold?
We are not.
Me neither.
Close to it, but not completely.
Me neither, and I'm totally down for barbecue after this show, no doubt. All right, we do have a question for you in our chat room. Sarah, please tell us.
Actually, our vegan is going to ask it. So
vegan Mel,
quite
ask,
appropriate.
Please,
The vegan speaks.
The vegan speaks.
This question's from Nicole Massa. Can spontaneous human combustion be debunked as anything else?
Can you pick apart these cases into anything else?
Would you repeat the question, Jeff? We could not hear it. Her voice is too faint.
Sure. The question was, can spontaneous human combustion be explained any other way in some of these cases? Could it be that maybe someone was drinking alcohol, a brandy or something, and smoking, and a smoldering fire devoured the corpse over many hours?
It was once argued in the medical community back in the 1700s and early 1800s that all victims of alleged SHC had to be alcoholics. They had to be so filled with spirituous liquors in the body tissues that once they dropped an external flame on themselves, a cigarette, a match or something, because the body was almost a combustible tinderbox because they drank so much, the alcohol provided the fuel for the fire. We've tried that experiment on a ham shank, and we can't get the kind of destruction to that ham shank that we find at the Dr. Bentley case. In fact, we end up with 99% of the ham shank left after the fire puts itself out.
Sure, sure. And those of us who have been around us, especially when we go out for beer after, you'd be dead long before you could drink that much alcohol. And we've tried.
Yes.
You pass out first, and then you get alcohol poisoning long before you become flammable. And Lord knows we've given it our best shot over the years, doing our own research, sake of science and all that.
That's when you catch fire, pies.
Yeah, right. That's how you lose. But okay, so that's been how some people explain this. Yet there's these cases that come up again and again. And you've been looking into this now, what, 35, 40 years?
Yeah, we're going on our 4th decade, yeah.
Wow, amazing. And now talk about, are there modern cases that come up? It seems like we haven't heard about this subject too much lately.
Well, it's a subject that you might imagine is incredibly difficult to research to begin with.
Right.
The cases are not well publicized. They're not accurately publicized. We have a number of death certificates. Dr. Bentley, for example, says that officially he died from asphyxiation. But there's no trachea left to autopsy, so the coroner cannot make such a determination because there's simply no physical evidence left to allow him to do that. The closest we've come to an honest representation of these cases legally is when the death certificate says death by fire of unknown origin or cause. We can accept that.
Right.
Firefighters often don't want to discuss this subject. They're intimidated by it. It involves xenophobia. It certainly challenges their ego and the training that they've had in the fire science community. And some people just we understand that here in Pennsylvania, state police, member of the state police actually ordered the photographs not be taken at one of these scenes because they just didn't want it documented for posterity. It's easier to brush the evidence of the subject and the topic itself under a rug than it is to face honestly these amazing fire phenomena that we've spent so many decades documenting and trying to understand. Right.
Well, I'm sure it wouldn't sit well with the general population to know that, hey man, think about watching television, all the medicine commercials that warn you like, oh my gosh, I'm sometimes depressed and feel overwhelmed. I need this pill. Imagine them saying, and you might just burst into flames. What do we take for that? Tell me. But yeah, drink a lot of water, I guess. Drink a lot of water. Okay, what about, is there some kind of classification to this victim? I mean, are they old? Are they young? Are they male? Are they female? Do they live alone? Have you found any pattern?
Yeah, another great question. Again, the physicians who studied this subject back in the 1700s and 1800s said that in addition to the victims having been alcoholics, all the victims were elderly, they were all overweight, they were all corpulent, they were all sedentary, and they were either French or German women. And we found that set of criteria to be completely unsupportable.
Yeah.
We've got more than 400 cases in our database. By gender, males and females are about equally represented in the database. Certainly the elderly are more prone to experience this combustible phenomenon than are the young. That's not surprising. The body tends to break down over decades. The oldest case in our database currently is a 114-year-old holy man from India. The youngest is a six-week-old toddler in a crib.
Oh my gosh!
So it's quite astonishing.
So it's happening to babies as well?
In that particular instance, either the infant itself spontaneously combusted or the cribbing material spontaneously ignited and then burned the infant in the crib.
So I mean, obviously the infant isn't smoking, isn't drinking.
Right.
So that's frightening for a parent. Okay, let's talk about this second case. Helen Conway from Delaware County, Pennsylvania, in 1964. This predated the case we talked about before with the Bentley, Dr. Bentley. However, a case you also looked into, a very famous photograph. We're going to show it to you in a minute. Tell us about Helen Conway.
Helen Conway is another classic case of quintessential spontaneous human combustion based on the scene that she left behind. A very localized fire, apparently of incredible heat. Surrounding combustibles escape singeing or scorching.
There it is.
In the kind of research that we do, oftentimes, I'm sure you've also found this yourself, Jeff, in the work that you do, synchronicity plays a key role. We're at the Pennsylvania Fire Academy, having been given the opportunity to attend an advanced arson course as a non-firefighter. That is extraordinary opportunity for us.
Right.
And the instructor at the end of the course said, I just received a set of photographs of what some people claim is spontaneous human combustion. There was, a leg left, and it was involved a chair and very localized fire damage. And we thought initially this was the Mary Reeser case from 1951, very famous case that occurred in St. Petersburg. When the photograph arrived in our hands, we realized this was not the Reeser case. This was a case at that time we knew nothing about. and we asked the instructor where we got the photograph, when the photograph was taken, you know, the name of the victim, all that kind of stuff. He had not a clue other than that it happened somewhere in southeastern Pennsylvania, which happens to be the location of Philadelphia. So we're dealing with an area with millions of people and no date, no name. How do you find the case? It took us 9 months to track it down, but we were successful through some interesting synchronicity. What is so intriguing and so important about the Conway case is the time factor. We were able to talk to the 3 senior fire officials who were at that fire scene in 1964. And to a man, they told us that the maximum time Mrs. Conway had to consume herself, to the extent that they discovered at the fire scene, without a fire to put out, by the way, was 21 minutes from the time that they knew she had been alive until they arrived to put out a fire which had no open combustible flame. 21 minutes is an astonishing, incredibly short period of time for the body to burn to that extent without an accelerant present, or even with an accelerant.
Sure.
The people who invoke the wick theory, which is the body smolders slowly in its own body fat once it's ignited externally, require many, many hours, and we've never seen that. We've never seen the wick effect successfully proven in any scientific experiment. We certainly have not been able to replicate it.
Right, right.
But with the Conway case, we're down to 21 minutes. You can't do that in a crematorium, burn a body to that extent, so far as we know. But in sitting down with the fire photographer who took that amazing photograph and calculating back the time that he told us it took him to leave the fire scene, go home, get his camera, come back, and have the smoke ejected by his colleagues, and then that he could start taking pictures, we narrowed that time frame down to no more than 360 seconds.
Oh my
so from the
gosh.
time that they believed Mrs. Conway was known to be alive until they arrived at that fire scene, actually no more than 6 minutes had elapsed. So incredibly short period of time.
Right, right. Incredible.
How do we explain it? How, you know, the local firefighters said they couldn't. Said they had never seen anything like this in their fire service career before or since they responded to the Conway fire call that November morning in 1964.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm sure a game changer for these firemen and fire professionals. All right, we do have another question for you in our chat room. Who's taking it, please?
I am.
Sarah.
Yes. So someone was saying that they could have sworn that they've heard of cases of live people catching on fire and being witness to this happening with no explanation of someone catching on fire, and someone's like, oh, maybe they were smoking a cigarette, but that wasn't the case at all. Have you heard anything like that?
Survivors.
Yeah, great question. Do we have living witnesses of this phenomenon for other people?
Oh, the debunkers hate you for asking this because we've got a good answer for you. There are witnesses to spontaneous human combustion, both in the classic sense and partial spontaneous human combustion.
Okay.
One case in point, 1974, if memory serves, suburb of London, England, Lambeth. Jack Stacey, fire brigade commander for that jurisdiction, he and his company received a call that passers-by noticed a bright blue flame or light in the first floor of a tenement building. The fire crew responded and found inside the dead body of Robert Bailey, a derelict, a hobo, if you will. Well, what's interesting about what they witnessed was that Mr. Bailey, while dead, was from his abdomen exuding with force, to quote Jack Stacey, a bright blue electric-colored flame jetting from his abdomen. The fire crew had to extinguish it with several canisters of chemicals. As Mr. Bailey was already deceased, we wish that the fire crew had just simply watched the event unfold naturally to see whether Mr. Bailey would have consumed to the extent that Mr. Bentley did or that Helen Conway did.
Right.
But here we have professional firefighters who have attested to witnessing in progress a fire-like energy emanating from within a human body. In another case, a survivor case, Jack Angel from 1974, we have medical testimony, documentation from the physicians who treated his injuries. He burned from the inside out, according to the physicians who treated him. His right forearm burned from the inside out so severely that it was charred to the bone and had to be amputated. He survived. At the time it happened, he was sleeping. He experienced no pain whatsoever during the combustion, if you will.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Okay, here's what's interesting to me. You also wrote a book called The Reiki Handbook way back in 1982, which is decades before it was as cool as it is now.
Oh, wow.
And Reiki's all about energy, human energy. Do you think we have enough energy in our bodies to produce this, to turn our electrical impulses into fire to that extent?
Wonderful question. Thanks for mentioning the Reiki Handbook. That's the first book that we believe was ever published about the Reiki system of hands-on healing. Certainly the body contains a lot of energy that is electrical in nature, also chemical in nature. And in our book, ABLAZE, we look at a number of theories, both biochemical and bioelectrical, to explain this phenomenon of internal human combustion. We had the privilege many years ago of talking to Gopi Krishna, who is a proponent of Kundalini in terms of broadening one's consciousness. But Kundalini also is a quasi-electrical energy that can produce physiological phenomena. And Gopi Krishna wrote about an experience that he had personally when his Kundalini was moving through his body out of balance. He said that he experienced his body temperature rapidly soaring to the point that he thought if he had not had the conscious awareness to rebalance that energy within himself, that he would have become a case for us to study, i.e. he would have spontaneously combusted. And while he had the conscious ability to rebalance that energy, that quasi-electrical energy within himself, not everybody has that awareness to do so.
Right. And is Reiki part of that? Do you think Reiki, is this human energy there to be manipulated, to heal, to harm, to, get to that point?
Reiki is a process to balance human bioenergies. Okay. So Reiki itself would not cause spontaneous human combustion. But an imbalance of one's biochemical or bioelectrical structure could we posit very easily explain some of the cases of spontaneous human combustion. Many of the cases appear not to be an oxidizing fire, the kind that you get when you strike a match, but rather an electrical process.
Right. Well, and one of the other terms I want to throw out is a term I read in one of the articles you had sent me, preternatural combustion. Is this wrath of God stuff? Are we talking about, sinners, zap, you're done?
Preternatural combustibility is a medical term that was posited to avoid having to deal with spontaneous human combustion. As you said at the top of your program, SHC is when there is no identifiable external ignition source and the body burns so completely as the photograph of Dr. Bentley demonstrates can happen. Preternatural combustibility is a corollary to SHC, and that is the phenomenon in which the body will burn as completely as Dr. Bentley did, but with the known external ignition source being present.
Okay.
In other words, if it was proven or someone witnessed that Dr. Bentley was actually smoking at the time and dropped a pipe on his lap, which again was posited at the time to explain away his death, and he burned that completely, then we're dealing with technically the phenomenon of preternatural combustibility, which again is as difficult to explain as is spontaneous human combustion.
Sure. So do you, after 4 decades now, do you have a theory as to what's causing this? What makes some people combust?
Oh, we've got about 120 theories in ABLAZE that we offer to the reader to explore and consider. Of course. Accept them all, throw them all out, accept a few, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and we have about 120 seconds, so quick.
Bioelectricity, biochemistry, Kundalini, Ki, the paranormal energies or the paraphysical energies in the body. We found a very interesting pattern to many of these fires that we call the cartography of combustion. It seems, at least in the United Kingdom, that where you are, where you're habiting, where you're living, where you're walking at any particular moment may become incendiarily hazardous to your health. Right. Because a lot of the fire alignments that we have in the United Kingdom can link up to a dozen cases of very strange fire phenomena.
Right.
So there seems to be a geographic or geophysical component to some of these fires.
Excellent. Well, Larry Arnold, we have come right up out of time. I really do appreciate you joining us tonight. The name of the book is ABLAZE, an amazing, amazing tome. Look at how thick that sucker is. Appreciate you sharing your theories, your ideas, your photographs with us and your research. Incredible topic, spontaneous combustion. First time we covered here on 30-odd minutes. Folks, please, until next time, for myself, the Oddballs on the Couch, for our guest, Larry Arnold. Next time, stay odd.